I never forgot the first day I truly saw that janitor woman. Not just seeing with my eyes, but feeling something touch my heart. It was a chilly autumn morning at California State University, Los Angeles. Dry leaves crackled under the feet of students rushing to class, and I, just finishing my night shift at the library, was trying not to fall asleep as I walked into the IT building. In that exhaustion, I heard a loud clank, then someone shouting with contempt, "Hey, old lady, clean this up. You ruined my shoes." I turned and saw Tyler Morgan, a face familiar to anyone at school. Rich, arrogant, always thinking he was above everyone. He had just thrown a cup of coffee onto the floor right in front of a janitor. She bent down to pick up a rag, her hand trembling. Her graying hair fell over her forehead, and her eyes, full of quiet endurance, only made Tyler raise his voice louder. His friends around him laughed as if it were morning entertainment. I felt heat rush up my neck. Maybe because I was used to being looked down on for working so many campus jobs to pay tuition. But the thing that made me step forward wasn't anger. It was the look in her eyes. A look too familiar to poor people. Fear, patience, but deep inside, a silent hurt. I couldn't stand it. "Tyler, apologize to her." My voice wasn't loud, but clear enough. The whole group turned to me, then burst out laughing. "Oh, look who it is! Turner, the library shift boy. My shoes cost $600 and she's worth nothing." Tyler pointed at the woman, then gave me a mocking look. "You know who she is? Just someone who scrubs the floor." I took a deep breath. "It doesn't matter what job she does. You spilled it, so you should apologize." Tyler's expression changed instantly. He stepped close, shoving my shoulder in front of everyone. "Who do you think you are?" I staggered but didn't fall. Before things escalated, the janitor rushed between us, grabbing my arm, her voice trembling. Don't get into trouble because of me. I'm okay." Her fear shocked me more than the shove. No one should fear like that when they're just doing honest work. But I stepped back because I didn't want her to suffer more. Tyler threw one last insult and walked away. Failures defend failures. She knelt down to wipe the coffee without looking at me. Her small, thin hands trembled with each motion. I knelt, picking up a cloth to help, but she quickly shook her head. "No, let me do it. Thank you. Not everyone dares to speak up like you." "I just did what's right," I replied. She looked at me for a long moment, as if wanting to say something but staying silent. A deep sadness lined her face, and I suddenly felt sorry for her. I didn't ask anything else. I nodded and left, but the heaviness stayed with me all day. That night, while delivering food, my second part-time job, I saw her again near the dorm service area. She was wiping the vending machine, the yellow lights casting shadows on her face worn by time. I was about to greet her when I noticed a red scratch on her arm. "What happened to your hand?" I asked. She flinched and hid her hand. "Nothing, just bumped into a wall." I knew it wasn't true, but she didn't want to talk, and I understood the pride of someone too used to enduring. I said gently, "About this morning, you should report it. Tyler was wrong." She bowed her head. "I don't want trouble for my son." I paused. I never thought she had a son studying here. "Your son goes to this school?" She shook her head. "No, he works in tech. He will be someone important one day." Her voice held pride and hope, something all mothers have. I smiled. "I'm sure he'll succeed." She looked at me for a long while, as if memorizing something. Then she walked away, leaving me with a strange feeling, part curiosity, part sympathy. I didn't know that small moment would become a fateful turning point in my life. That night, before sleeping, I couldn't stop thinking about her. A woman working silently from morning till night, enduring condescending looks, hiding her wounds behind an old uniform. Why did a mother like her have to live such a life? And did Tyler's words hurt her more than that bruise? I didn't know, but I felt something was about to change. As if standing up for her wasn't just a small act, it was something that would open a door I never imagined. I always thought the most memorable moment in college would be graduation day. But it wasn't. That moment came on an ordinary evening when I didn't expect to see Mary again, and certainly didn't expect to glimpse the quiet exhaustion hidden behind her gentle smile. That night I had just finished a long shift delivering food around the dorm area. My body felt drained. My legs felt like they were about to fall off after walking all day. I was pulling my little delivery cart toward the parking lot when I heard a squeaking sound coming from the vending machine. In the dim, yellow light, I saw Mary bending over, wiping the dust stuck along the machine's edges. It wasn't even her job. The technician was supposed to handle that area, but she still did it as if everything around her was her responsibility. I walked over and greeted her. She looked up and smiled kindly, but something about her seemed hidden. When my eyes fell on the wound on her arm, a long scratch from her wrist to her elbow, I immediately felt uneasy. "What happened to your arm? It looks worse than this morning," I asked. She flinched and quickly pulled her sleeve down. "It's nothing, honey. I just bumped into the toolbox," but I could tell she was lying. That scratch didn't look like a small accident. It looked like something caused by being pushed or scraped against something rough. I suddenly remembered Tyler shoving her into the cleaning cart earlier. Anger rose in me again, stronger than when he had pushed me. I asked again, gently but firmly, "Was it because of Tyler?" She shook her head quickly, as if just the mention of his name frightened her. "Don't talk about that anymore. I don't want any trouble." Part of me wanted to report everything to the school administration immediately. But when I looked into her eyes, the same eyes filled with sadness and endurance, I knew she would never allow that. For people like her, trouble was the greatest fear, because it could take away the only income they had. I sat on the step next to her and asked, "Do you get tired working this much?" She gave a soft smile, both gentle and sad. "I'm used to it. After my husband died, I had to do everything to make sure my son could go to school properly." I was surprised. "Your son is in college?" "No, he works in tech. He's very smart. I just hope his life won't be as hard as mine." Her voice trembled slightly. "He will become someone important one day. Good people will be rewarded." I went silent. So this woman, looked down upon in the university hallway, was carrying an entire future on her back. The sacrifices of mothers like her are invisible to the world. Yet they are what shape extraordinary people. She stopped cleaning and sat beside me, as if needing to release something from her heart. She told me her husband died in a work accident when Lucas, her son, was only 10. Since then, she had worked 2 or 3 jobs at a time. She said the scariest part about being a janitor wasn't the exhaustion, but being treated like she didn't exist. When people are poor, they are easily seen as nothing. My chest tightened. I had lost my parents young too, so I understood what it meant to rely on your own hands. But somehow, her situation felt harder than mine. She told me Lucas grew up well, studied hard, and never disappointed her. "He always says he'll make enough money so I can stop working. But I don't hope for anything. I just want him to live well." I looked at her and instinctively thought, that child must be an amazing person, just like his mother. But I had no idea that years later, I would stand before him as a CEO, at a time when I didn't even know his name yet. When she stood up to continue her work, I suddenly asked, "Mary, in the morning, when I stood up for you, did you cry?" She paused, then nodded gently. I was touched. It's been a long time since anyone defended me. I lowered my gaze, feeling something surge in my chest. Not pride, something deeper, like I had touched a part of someone's life without realizing it. "Why did you cry? Just because of one small act?" I asked. She answered softly, "When a person is too used to being looked at with contempt, even one small act of kindness can make them cry." I couldn't say anything. I just wished there was something I could do so she would never have to feel that way again. We said goodbye and went our separate paths. But as I walked away, I looked back at her small figure in the dim yellow light. Her back was slightly bent, yet her steps were steady, as if carrying the weight of the world. I silently hoped her son would become as successful as she believed. Not because she bragged, but because she deserved to see that day come. That night, I went to sleep with a strange feeling, as if life was pulling me closer to something I didn't understand yet, but would soon change me forever. 3 years after graduation, I realized adult life was nothing like what people said it would be. There were no miracles appearing out of nowhere, no opportunities falling into your hands, and certainly no one coming to show you the way. Los Angeles was a vast city where someone as small as me was nothing more than a grain of sand blown away at any moment. These past 3 years had been filled with failures, job after job, application after application. yet still no stable work. I used to believe that touching my college diploma meant touching my future, but life wasn't that gentle. I had worked many jobs: delivery driver, warehouse helper, temporary IT assistant at a startup, and even a late-night barista. Each job lasted only a few months because I kept getting laid off, or the company shut down, or the project collapsed. Sometimes I felt like I was a long chain of bad luck that never ended. I moved into a tiny apartment that barely fit a bed and a small desk, and paid rent with whatever money I could scrape together. Every night I would lie awake thinking about the future, feeling as if the whole city was moving ahead while I remained stuck in place. My classmates were already working, some as software engineers, others as project assistants or in marketing. Many posted photos of their new offices, company-paid lunches, and contracts they were about to sign. Meanwhile, the only things I had signed in 3 years were my lease and delivery receipts. I had submitted dozens of job applications. Every rejection email felt like a small part of me withering away. Even though I kept telling myself to stay persistent, that persistence grew heavier and more exhausting every day. There were nights when I just stared at my bright laptop screen, not knowing what to do next. I even thought about switching careers entirely, abandoning the IT major I had spent 4 years studying. One gloomy afternoon, I received a message from Dylan, a friend from my programming class back in college. He sent me a link with a short note. "Hey, this company is hiring. I think it fits you." I clicked on it, and the name on the screen made me pause for a moment. Bennett Innovations. It was a rising startup making waves in the LA tech scene. The founder was a young CEO, only a few years older than me, but already running a multi-million-dollar company. They were hiring an executive assistant. No heavy experience required, but someone quick, honest, and capable of handling pressure. Those requirements made me hesitate. I wondered if I was truly good enough for an environment like that, when all I had was 3 years of struggle and a CV that wasn't impressive. But then I remembered Mary. For some reason, her image appeared clearly in my mind, her hopeful eyes when speaking about her son's future, and her words, "Good people will be rewarded." I had stood up for her not because I wanted a reward, but that sentence reminded me I wasn't completely useless in this world. I thought of how she always kept going, always kept her back straight even when life weighed heavily on her shoulders. If she could endure like that, why couldn't I? I applied for the job. My hand trembled slightly when I clicked submit. I didn't expect much. I was used to rejection. But just 1 day later, I received an email. "We would like to invite you for an in-person interview at our headquarters." I froze, staring at the screen in disbelief. It was the first time in more than half a year that I had gotten an interview. As the interview day approached, I practiced answers until I memorized them, refined my CV, and ironed my oldest but neatest shirt. I even spent hours in front of the mirror practicing how to speak more confidently. The night before the interview, I lay awake, my heart pounding like a child facing the most important exam of his life. Mary's words echoed again. "As long as you live well, life will open a path for you." I didn't know why this one stayed with me even after 3 years of out 3 years. As calmed me. I finally closed my eyes. I whispered to myself, no matter what happens, at least I'm trying. This moment, I had no idea that when I stepped into that interview, the person I would be facing was her son, and that the next day would change my life in ways I could never have imagined. The interview day at Bennett Innovations arrived faster than I expected. That morning, I woke up early despite having barely slept the night before. I ironed the only dress shirt I had that still looked presentable, fixed my hair neatly, and stared at myself in the mirror for a long time, as if trying to reassure myself that I was good enough. At least good enough to walk into that building. One hand trembled slightly as I held my documents, while the other stayed in my pocket to hide how nervous I was. I had never stepped inside a multi-million-dollar tech company before, let alone gone there for an interview for a position as important as executive assistant to the CEO. The Bennett Innovations building stood in downtown Los Angeles, gleaming like a block of blue glass in the morning sun. As I walked into the lobby, I was almost overwhelmed. A giant LED screen displayed the company's upcoming projects. Young employees in sharp outfits moved past me quickly with confidence. I felt like I was stepping into a different world, A world where everyone knew exactly what they wanted, while I was just trying not to look too out of place. The receptionist greeted me with a professional smile and directed me to the 15th floor. The elevator moved so smoothly that I couldn't even tell if it was going up. When the doors opened, I stepped into a space filled with glass walls and pure white lights, with the entire LA skyline visible from above. Right next to the waiting area was the CEO's office. A small nameplate on the door read, Lucas Bennett, founder and CEO. The name made me swallow hard. I didn't know what to expect. A cold genius? Someone too busy to care about insignificant candidates? Or the arrogant CEO-type people gossiped about online? Whatever the case, I had to walk in. While organizing my documents, my eyes accidentally landed on a framed photo sitting on the side table near the CEO's office. In the picture was a woman wearing a light blue shirt, her graying hair framing her gentle face, her smile familiar enough to make me freeze on the spot. I stepped closer, my heart pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. No way. That was Mary. I could hardly believe my eyes. Why was her photo here? Why in the CEO's office? I looked at the picture more closely and saw a young man standing behind her, smart-looking, sharp-eyed, clearly her son. I had always wondered what he looked like, and now the answer was right in front of me. Before I could make sense of it, the CEO's door opened. A young man stepped out wearing a white shirt and gray blazer, slightly taller than me. He didn't look like the CEOs I saw online, no flashy suit, no expensive watch. But he radiated a presence that made it immediately obvious he was the most important person in the room. His eyes were sharp but not cold, the kind of eyes belonging to someone who had seen much, understood much, and wasn't easily fooled by appearances. Ryan Turner? He asked. I stood up straight. Yes, that's me. He gestured for me to enter. I walked in with shaky legs, every sense heightened by the pressure in the air. When he sat across from me and opened his laptop, I knew this interview would not be like any other I had experienced. He didn't ask the usual questions like, tell me about yourself, or why do you want to work here? He stared at me for a long moment, as if evaluating not just my resume, but my entire being. His first question was, what has been the hardest thing for you during the past 3 years? I was surprised, but answered honestly. I told him about the unstable jobs, the rejections, the sleepless nights worrying about rent. I wasn't sure if I should be that honest, but something in his eyes told me he didn't want rehearsed answers. He nodded slightly, acknowledging something internally. Then he asked again, this time sharper. If you had to choose between rushing a project for profit or protecting your employees' well-being, which would you pick? I answered immediately. I would protect the employees. I thought he would ask for an explanation, but he simply nodded again, as if the answer alone spoke volumes. Then his eyes moved to the picture frame on the table and he asked, did you see this photo when you walked in? I swallowed. Yes. He rested his hand on the frame, speaking calmly but deeply. That's my mother. My heart skipped a beat. Heat rushed to my face. I had never been this tense. He continued slowly. Have you ever met her? I didn't know whether to lie or tell the truth. But lying was something I could never do to someone who trusted in my small act of kindness. I told the truth. Yes, she worked as a janitor at my university. He looked at me deeply, then suddenly gave a faint, unreadable smile. My mother told me a lot about a student who defended her from a bully. Did you know that? I froze. He leaned in slightly, as if trying to read my expression more clearly. I've always wanted to meet that person. In that moment, I didn't know what awaited me next, but I knew one thing for sure. Today would change the rest of my life. When Lucas said he had always wanted to meet that person, my heart felt like someone was squeezing it. I didn't know whether it was a good sign or a bad one, and I couldn't understand how fate could twist in such a strange way. The woman I once helped had turned out to be the mother of the CEO at the company I desperately hoped to join. At that moment, I felt as though I was standing on the hinge of my life, where a single sentence from Lucas could open a door, or close it forever. He sat upright, closed his laptop, and intertwined his fingers. He looked at me as if trying to see through every thought running in my head. No one had ever looked at me like that. Serious, assessing, as though he was evaluating not just my resume, but the entirety of my character. My mother told me that if you hadn't stepped in that day, she could have been hurt much worse, Lucas said, his calm tone unable to hide the restrained anger when he referred to the bully. She is everything I have in my life. I lowered my head, feeling ashamed that I had so often complained about my own life, while a woman like Mary had endured silently her entire life without a single complaint. I just did what was right, I said softly. Lucas gave a faint smile. Doing what's right isn't something everyone chooses to do, Ryan. Especially when the person being mistreated is just a janitor. His words hit me hard. I remembered that moment when Tyler splashed coffee onto the floor, then shoved Mary as if she were an object in his way. Back then, I had only felt anger, but thinking about it now, I felt more sadness for her smallness, her silence, and the years she had endured the disdain of others. Lucas stood up, walked to the door, and opened it slightly. "Mom, could you come in for a moment?" My head snapped around. My heart felt like it was about to leap out of my chest the moment I saw Mary's silhouette enter the room. She wore a simple outfit, her gray hair tied neatly behind her head. The instant she saw me, she froze, as if she couldn't believe her eyes. "Ryan," her voice trembled. I stood up quickly, unsure what to do with my hands. I simply bowed slightly. "Hello, ma'am," she approached, her eyes turning watery, and I realized something. She had no idea I would be interviewing here. Her genuine surprise made me exhale in relief. Lucas pulled out a chair for her, then turned to me again. My mother told me about that day more than once. She saved the camera footage as a reminder that there are still good people out there. I looked at her, noticing how her kind face seemed more tired than it had years ago. 3 years. They had aged her. "Why did you keep the footage?" I asked. She lowered her gaze, her voice shaking. "Because I wanted to remember that someone treated me kindly. And I wanted my son to know that when I was at my weakest, someone stood up for me." My throat tightened. I never imagined what I did would mean that much to her. At the time, I simply couldn't bear the injustice. Lucas stepped closer, his voice dropping slightly. "Ryan, do you think I invited you here just for a normal interview?" I stayed quiet. I truly didn't know what he was thinking. He continued, "My mother said you have a good heart, but I need to know, after 3 difficult years, do you still have that heart?" A slight tremor ran through me. This was no longer a typical interview. This was a test to see whether I still was the person I used to be. He asked, "If someday someone disrespects a low-level employee at this company, what would you do?" I didn't hesitate. I would defend them. Because no one deserves to be treated badly just because of the job they do. Mary brought her hand to her mouth, trying to hold back emotion. Lucas studied me for a long moment, as if weighing every word. Finally, he nodded slightly. "Good. But I want to test you one more time." I swallowed. "Yes?" Lucas crossed his arms, leaning lightly against the desk. "I want to see how you react when you face the person who once insulted my mother." I froze. No, it couldn't be. At that moment, the door of the small meeting room next to the office swung open. A familiar voice echoed from the hallway. "How long is this interview taking? I don't have all day waiting around." I recognized that voice instantly. Tyler Morgan. He was here for an interview too? Mary's hands tightened nervously. Lucas's eyes sharpened as he looked at me. "Are you ready for your first challenge?" I didn't know if this was coincidence or fate carefully arranging the moment. But I knew one thing. 3 years ago, I defended Mary on instinct. This time, I had to face my past with maturity. I took a deep breath, lifted my head, and answered, "I'm ready." And the CEO's door was about to open into a confrontation I never imagined would happen in my life. The moment I heard Tyler's voice echo from the hallway, my heart pounded like a war drum. 3 years wasn't long, but it was enough for the memory of him to become a thick layer of dust in my mind. I thought I would never see him again, and if I did, it would be just a passing encounter on some random street. But no. Fate brought him right into the interview room of the company I was pouring all my hopes into. And worse, he was the challenge Lucas had prepared for me. The CEO's door opened, and Tyler walked in with the same familiar expression, arrogant, smug, and radiating baseless confidence. His suit looked slightly more expensive than during college, but the contempt in his eyes hadn't changed. When he saw me, his eyebrows lifted with a sneer. "Oh, unbelievable," he scoffed. "Turner, the library shift boy, actually came here for an interview?" Heat spread up my neck, but I forced myself to remain calm. I was no longer the impulsive student from years ago. I was standing in a CEO's office. His mother was here too. I couldn't react recklessly. Lucas stood with his arms crossed, watching every movement Tyler made, as if quietly recording it. But he said nothing, only gestured for Tyler to sit in the chair across from me. Tyler smirked, as if he'd already won something before anything even began. "Sorry I'm late," he told Lucas, his tone lacking any respect. "I had more important appointments." I almost laughed. He still thought the world revolved around him. Lucas replied calmly, "It's fine. The evaluation hasn't started yet." "The evaluation?" I glanced at Lucas, realizing he was about to do something unexpected. He reached for a remote on the desk and pressed a button. The large screen behind him lit up. A video appeared, an old hallway, dim lighting, and a younger Tyler splashing coffee onto the floor, pointing at Mary's face. My chest tightened. Tyler froze completely. Lucas didn't look at the screen. His eyes stayed locked on Tyler, cold and sharp. "Do you remember this scene?" Tyler looked around desperately. That was years ago. No need to explain." Lucas cut him off. His voice wasn't loud, but it held authority. "The woman in the video is my mother." Tyler's face drained of color. His mouth opened and closed helplessly. Mary lowered her head, avoiding his gaze. As for me, I felt like I was witnessing a piece of long overdue justice. Lucas continued, "I kept this footage for 3 years as a reminder that there are people with privilege and wealth, but no character." Tyler tried to salvage some pride. "I was young. Everyone makes mistakes." "The problem isn't the mistake," Lucas said, his tone sharp as a blade. "It's that you never apologized. Not once." Tyler glanced at me, then at Mary, hoping someone would rescue him. No one spoke. I had never seen a man look both terrified and desperately prideful at the same time. Lucas turned to me. "Ryan." I straightened. "Yes? What do you think about this?" I looked at Tyler. He was trembling slightly, yet still trying to appear tough. Memories of him pushing me, laughing at Mary, calling me a failure, all flooded back. "I think," I said slowly, "no one has the right to demean another person because they're poor or have a less glamorous job. The people most deserving of respect aren't the wealthy. They're the ones who treat others well." Silence filled the room. Tyler snapped, "Are you lecturing me now?" Before I could respond, Lucas stepped in. "He's not lecturing anyone. He's simply telling the truth." Tyler turned to Lucas. "What do you want? To humiliate me? This has nothing to do with the job I applied for." Lucas walked closer, stopping right in front of him, speaking in a low, steady voice. "It does. I will never hire someone who looks down on the vulnerable. This company has no place for people like you." Tyler fell silent entirely. I had never seen him so small. Lucas nodded toward the door. "You may leave." Tyler stood, pale, then shot me a hateful look, as if I were the reason he failed. But he said nothing. He simply walked out, and the door closed behind him with a final, echoing click. For a moment, the room was quiet. The tension seemed to dissolve slowly. Lucas looked at me again, his eyes gentler. "You did well." I let out a breath I didn't realize I had been holding. Lucas added, "Your test isn't over yet, but before we move on, I need you to know one thing." I waited. He held my gaze, speaking with sincerity. "Thank you for standing up for my mother that day." Mary placed a gentle hand on my shoulder, and her smile made my throat tighten. This interview had gone far beyond evaluating skills. It was an evaluation of who I was as a person, and I understood that the next challenge would be even greater. After Tyler left the room, the air inside the CEO's office grew quieter, but not lighter. My heart was still beating fast. Even though I had stayed calm while facing him, I knew exactly how tense I had been. Not because I feared him anymore. Those days were long gone. but because I realized that the past I once wanted to forget had now become part of the most important evaluation of my life. Lucas sat down again, fingers interlaced, eyes fixed on me as if preparing for the next phase of a strict test. Mary remained seated beside him, her eyes still shadowed with sadness from having to confront the man who once insulted her. I turned to her and gently asked, "Are you okay?" She smiled, though the smile was strained. "I'm fine, just a bit emotional." Lucas leaned back in his chair, exhaled softly, then said, "Ryan, thank you for keeping your composure. Not everyone could have handled that." I nodded, though I still didn't know what was coming next. He looked at me intently. "Now comes the most important part." I straightened instinctively. "Yes? Do you want to work with me?" he asked. The question stunned me for a few seconds. It should have been the moment I had always wished for. But the directness of his question, sharp, immediate, without any transition, made my heart skip a beat. Before I could respond, Lucas continued, "But before you walk through that door, you need to understand something. Being an executive assistant is not simple. You'll be with me in every meeting, every major decision, every heavy pressure that most employees will never see. You will witness both the bright and dark sides of this company." He tapped lightly on the desk, his voice lowering. "Are you strong enough to handle that?" His question wasn't about skills or experience. It was aimed straight at my core. I paused for a few seconds, asking myself honestly, after 3 years of setbacks, rejections, and losing direction, was I strong enough? Lucas rose from his chair and walked to the large glass window, hands clasped behind his back. From there, he looked out at the restless movement of Los Angeles below. "I was put in this position when I was still very young," he said quietly, though every word was clear. "That doesn't mean I'm stronger than others. It just means I'm not allowed to be weak." He turned back to me, his eyes sharp but not cold. "I need someone beside me who understands that true strength doesn't come from power or wealth, but from the ability to stay standing even when you feel weakest." I listened closely. Every sentence he spoke carried weight. Lucas approached me. "Ryan, my mother is the most influential person in my life. She taught me that if you want to know the true worth of a man, watch how he treats someone who can give him nothing." He paused before asking, "Do you believe in that?" I looked him in the eyes. "Yes. I believe in it." Lucas smiled. "Good. Because if you didn't, you wouldn't be right for me." He walked back to his desk and pulled out a folder along with a company access card. "Ryan, I want you to be my executive assistant," he said, placing the folder in front of me. I froze. My throat tightened. I had thought this was just a long interview, but it turned out the entire process had been a series of tests for Lucas to determine whether I was worthy of this role. Mary put a hand on my shoulder, her smile gentle. "My son chose you. Because you deserve it." I turned to her, feeling 3 years of pressure lift from my shoulders. I knew, unmistakably, that this moment would remain etched in my memory forever. But Lucas wasn't finished. "This job comes with one condition," he said. I straightened again. "What condition?" He crossed his arms, expressions serious. "You must be absolutely honest, whether it's in reports, communication, decisions, or private meetings. An assistant can lift a CEO, or bring him down." He stepped closer, voice lower but sharper. "I don't need the most skilled person. I need the one I can trust." I took a deep breath. The weight of his words anchored deep inside me. I won't betray your trust," I said. Lucas held my gaze for a few seconds, then nodded. "Then," he extended his hand, "welcome to Bennett Innovations." I took his hand. Lucas's grip was firm and warm, like a handshake sealing a moment that would change my entire life. In that moment, I understood that the tests weren't over. In fact, they were only beginning. My first day at Bennett Innovations began with a mix of excitement, nervousness, and a very real sense of anxiety. Standing in front of the towering glass building, the morning sunlight reflected off its surface so brightly that I had to squint. I took a deep breath, tightened my grip on my backpack strap, and stepped in. As the automatic doors opened, I realized this was the first time in a long while that I truly felt like I was stepping into a place I might actually belong. The receptionist greeted me with a familiar smile. "Good morning, Ryan. The CEO is waiting for you on the 20th floor. I nodded, my chest tightening slightly. The 20th floor was the executive level. The elevator moved so smoothly that I barely felt it until the doors slid open. When I stepped out, I saw Lucas standing near the glass railing, looking down at the city as if he had been born to stand in a place like that. "You're here?" he asked without turning. "I arrived a bit early," I replied. "That's good." He turned to look at me, giving a brief nod. "Today, I'll show you the reality of the job." I followed him into the office. The room was spacious with floor-to-ceiling windows, a dark wooden desk, product interface prototypes laid across a side table, and a digital board showing ongoing projects. It was all so modern that I felt slightly overwhelmed. Lucas pointed at a desk beside his. "This is your desk. You'll follow my schedule. Every meeting, every decision, every shift. You must be aware of all of it." I nodded, trying to absorb every word. Before I even had time to settle my things, Lucas said, "Your first meeting begins in 10 minutes. Today, you'll mostly observe, but I expect you to take notes." I opened my laptop, started a new document, and my pulse quickened again. The first meeting took place in the main conference room, where the core members of the company were already seated. When Lucas stepped in, the room instantly fell silent. He didn't need to say anything. Just one look was enough to signal the start. I sat beside him, listening carefully to every comment, every argument, every decision. This wasn't a university classroom anymore. This was where ideas could become global products, where one wrong decision could cost millions. A few minutes later, Lucas leaned slightly toward me and whispered, "Do you understand what they're discussing?" I answered, "They're debating whether to delay the beta release due to increased server error risk during peak hours." Lucas gave a small, testing smile. "And your opinion?" I swallowed. "If the risk is that high, then accelerating the security checks might matter more than meeting the deadline." Lucas nodded. "Good. I want you to record that point later." The meeting lasted over an hour, and by the end of it, my head felt like it might burst. Yet beneath the exhaustion was a strange joy, the joy of actually working, learning, and being recognized. As the meeting ended, Lucas led me out into the hallway, lined with transparent glass walls. "Good job," he said. "I only listened," I said modestly. "No, you observed well, and you understood. That matters." His tone was steady, confident, like he had confirmed I was the right person. Warmth spread through my chest. After 3 years of rejection, I wasn't used to being praised. But my day wasn't over yet. In the afternoon, while I was organizing some documents, there was a knock at the door. I looked up to see Mary walking in with a lunchbox. "I figured you wouldn't have time to eat," she said. I blinked, surprised and touched. "You didn't have to do that. You helped me when no one else did," she said, placing the box on my desk. "Now let me help you." My throat tightened. That lunch wasn't just food. It was care. Something I hadn't received in a long time. Near the end of the workday, Lucas called me into his office again. He shut the door and spoke in a deeper tone. "Ryan," he said, "from today on, your life is going to change." I looked at him, unsure what that meant. "You'll have to sacrifice many things. Time, sleep, sometimes even personal emotions." Lucas placed a hand on the desk. "But if you truly want this, I'll be here to guide you." I inhaled deeply. "I want this," I said without hesitation. Lucas nodded. "Then starting tomorrow, you'll enter the real training process. I won't be easy on you, but I'll be fair." He handed me another card. "This is an extended access badge. Only the most trusted personnel have it." My hands trembled slightly as I accepted it. This level of trust was no small thing. As I was about to leave, Lucas called out, "Ryan." I turned. "Yes?" He held my gaze for a long moment before saying a sentence that made my chest tighten. "My mother trusts you. And so do I." I bowed my head. "I won't let you down." Stepping into the hallway, I felt like I was walking into a new chapter of my life. A chapter filled with challenges I couldn't yet see, but with one thing absolutely clear. I wasn't walking alone anymore.